Live at 6.
Good evening. These are the stories making the headlines.
The trial of former DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson and his wife Eleanor for historical sex offences has been delayed due to her ongoing ill health.
The PSNI needs an urgent bailout by Westminster, according to the Police Federation, as Stormont does not have the money to solve the funding crisis.
And as Newcastle recovers from some of the worst flooding in decades, residents call for a permanent solution to the torrential scenes at the weekend.
They're hearing what we're saying, but we're not really being listened to in terms of that turning into concrete action.
Also tonight.
A cruel ending to Jonathan Ray's career here in Spain, but an incredible career to celebrate as he gets ready for the next chapter.
And it's a rather changeable week of weather with wet and windy conditions through the week, feeling cooler by the weekend. I'll have all of the details later with the forecast.
Geoffrey Donaldson and his wife Eleanor has been delayed yet again, and a judge has said that it is not likely to happen until next year.
Sir Geoffrey and Lady Donaldson are charged with historical sexual offences, all of which they deny. Today's hearing focused on whether Eleanor Donaldson would be fit to stand trial. Our South East reporter Stuart Robson was in Newry Crown Court.
It's nearly a year and a half since the Donaldsons were arrested. Both Sir Geoffrey and his wife Eleanor are due to face a raft of historical sexual abuse charges, all of which they deny. However, for the second time, a proposed trial date has been scrapped. First it was March this year, and now it's been confirmed that it will not go ahead in November. That's due to Eleanor Donaldson's health. The court heard that the former MP's wife underwent 2 specialist medical assessments last week. Although they won't help to determine her fitness to stand trial, her barrister said a full doctor's report can't be released without those results. The judge was told that the earliest these results would be available would be the end of October, but more likely into November. All legal parties concerned described this latest delay as regrettable. Former DUP leader Sir Geoffrey, who's 62, faces 18 charges. They include 1 count of rape, as well as several counts of indecent assault and gross indecency. His wife faces aiding and abetting charges. All of the alleged offences span a time frame between 1985 and 2008, concerning 2 alleged complainants. Neither defendant appeared during the latest hearing. Judge Paul Ramsey said the case would be reviewed once again on the 13th of November, when he hoped to set a new trial date. That's now expected to be in 2026. Stuart Robson, UTV Live, Newry Crown Court.
According to the Police Federation here, the PSNI needs an urgent bailout from Westminster amid a chronic funding crisis.
The appeal was made to the Secretary of State, but Stormont still has not found money for a £23 million funding deficit. The Northern Ireland office is firm in its stance that the problem is one for the executive to solve. Sarah McCarran reports.
Sending out an SOS to the SOS.
We're asking now through the Secretary of State that the UK government intervenes here and gives PSNI the lifeline that it so desperately needs.
The Police Federation says the PSNI's funding deficit could be hundreds of millions of pounds to cover the cost of data breach compensation, fund a holiday case payout and sort an agreed pay rise. This situation felt deeply among the rank and file. They're under a lot of pressure with workloads and it's breaking them. Breaking them to such to the extent that they're unable to continue on in their policing careers. And if that's not a warning sign, I don't know what is. This is not the first time that Westminster has been asked to intervene. The Chief Constable reached out to the Prime Minister last year. John Boucher was criticised for going above the executive at that time to make a plea over finances. And just last week, the Policing Board's chair wrote to the Secretary of State appealing for a round-table meeting over how legacy PSNI cases are funded.
Well, in today's appeal, Mr Kelly said that Mr Benn cannot play Pontius Pilate and claim that he can't interfere because policing is a devolved matter. But in a written statement that we received from the Northern Ireland office, it said that the policing budget is a matter for the executive and it's then up to the Chief Constable to decide how those resources are allocated.
Day-to-day operational in Northern Ireland is indeed the Stormont executive. However, there is security funding under national security issues, which is solely funded by UK government. My pushback to the Secretary of State and UK government is, if you have an under-resourced, under-pressure policing service, that has to have a detrimental impact on our ability to respond and assist with national security matters. So therefore, you can't sit in your hands in this one.
Policing board members today agreeing that this should not all be a Stormont problem, given that some of these costs were not foreseen.
None of those were actually planned part of the business, so it would be difficult for the Chief Constable or indeed the Justice Minister to plan those. The Justice Minister, in fairness to her, set aside 3.5% for the pay raise. But obviously the award was a wee bit higher than that in terms of 4.75, but it must be said that that's a national agreement. That's not an agreement made here in Northern Ireland.
It's not entirely fair for the UK government to say we already fund the UK executive, we already give additional money. Not when the money that you have given additional has flatlined over the years, hasn't seen a significant increase, and where we can't actually see that it has actually uplifted the PSNI, because quite frankly it hasn't.
It seems this so-called funding storm will take quite some time to pass. Sarah McCurran, UTV Live.
There have been calls for a permanent solution to flooding in Newcastle after parts of the town were once again submerged after heavy rain over the weekend.
It's been described as the worst flooding for more than 4 decades. One resident told UTV that the destruction caused by the floodwaters was like an earthquake. Jordan Motes has spent the day in Newcastle.
This is a road, but it looked like a river. Nothing was stopping this flood. The water just kept coming.
So high, so fast, so noisy, and it was ripping up the road. Big sections of the tarmac were actually standing up as if it was like an earthquake. Water was gushing out of that wall behind me like a natural waterfall, and down into the garden here was level to my neighbour's wall with water. I've never seen the like of it.
Barreling down at the speed was something to behold. Those living here captured the moment the water took over. Walls and gates were no match. This water was on the move. Nothing was getting in its way.
The pathway into the forest at the top of this hill was recently resurfaced with very loose, large stones, the majority of which are flowed down the road, and quite a few are in my driveway now. That didn't cause the flood, but it didn't help with the situation on the road as the water flowed down. I've heard that there's possibly some sort of blockage of a gully in the forest that caused some sort of build-up.
The water came down off the mountain and turned this pathway into a river. It came down with such force, you can see it's dug a trench the whole way down this path. The water itself, despite all the sandbags, had nowhere to go but beyond and right down the main road.
It would take you off your feet. It was so powerful. Like when you stood in, the tarmac was just crumbling under your feet as well. It was just sinking. As you can see, parts of the road there are like a couple of feet deep. There's a hole just there. This road here was the worst.
As the residents below the mountain battled against the rising waters, rescuers were deployed higher up to a camper who'd been cut off by the floodwater.
They had plenty of wet kit, their tent was good and all of that, but the change in the landscape around them wasn't something that they'd really considered. So rivers on either side of where they were camping had swollen to the point where they were impassable.
This morning the clean-up operation was underway. Huge holes remain, the lasting mark of yesterday's downpour. With the tarmac ripped up and thrown around the street, it's clear this road needs replaced. But this isn't the first time Newcastle has dealt with flooding, and there are concerns it keeps happening.
They're hearing what we're saying, but we're not really being listened to in terms of that turning into concrete action. We've even suggested that in an area that's prone to flooding, all of the maintenance schedules should be upped in frequency, but that's fallen on deaf ears, like people coming out and cleaning the gullies. So there's a lot more maintenance, more regular maintenance in an area that has high risk from flooding. That's what we'd like to see happening as well, until we get permanent solutions.
Residents here say this is the worst flooding in this part of Newcastle for over 40 years. They're now looking reassurances it won't happen again. Jordan Motes, UTV Live, Newcastle.
The Belfast Trust has apologised for any delays after UTV learned that almost 10,000 HPV or smear tests have had to be sent to Gateshead for screening since September the 30th because of faulty laboratory equipment in the Belfast Trust. Well, our health correspondent Deborah McAleese joins me now. Deborah, the Belfast Trust only started this service last November. Can you tell me precisely what the problems are?
Well, all the Trust is really saying at the minute, Rose, is that it's technical issues with the lab equipment, and they're saying that engineers are on site trying to resolve the issues. Now, the Trust said that this move to send these tests out of Northern Ireland for screening is part of their contingency plan, and also insisted that the equipment failure hasn't caused any backlog. But look, this isn't the first time that there have been problems with this service since the Belfast Trust won the contract to become the only laboratory in Northern Ireland to run HPV screening. So when the lab became operational in November, 5,000 smears had to be sent to Gateshead to try and clear the backlog. And then in May, UTV, we were made aware of issues with equipment. That, although that didn't appear to impact at the time on screening on the site, unlike now. Now, it is reassuring that the Trust has this contingency arrangement that tests are still being screened, even though not in the Belfast Trust. But staff are asking me, this really can't be best practice when you have a facility here in Belfast, but it can't be utilised fully.
Yeah, well, the Trust has apologised about delays. What information do you have about delays?
Well, in a statement, the Trust has said that the initial test results that have been sent away to Gateshead are expected to be returned within 21 days, and that the team is working very hard to try and rectify this issue, and that other services provided by Belfast Trust laboratories haven't been impacted.
Deborah McAleese, thank you very much.
The delayed inquest into the death of the Belfast teenager Noah Dono will begin in January. Last week, the coroner's service released CCTV showing the 14-year-old leaving his house the night before he went missing. The footage shows the teenager leaving his home in South Belfast before returning around half an hour later, barefoot and without the headphones which he had been carrying.
Ireland's Atlantic coast stretches for hundreds of miles, leaving it incredibly exposed to major drug shipments by international crime gangs.
That risk stretches right here into Northern Ireland, with drugs regularly crossing the border. Jordan Moore has been in Killybegs in County Donegal to find out more.
Scenic and serene, Killybegs is the Republic's biggest fishing port, but in this Donegal town, the authorities are looking to catch something else.
Since January 2024, the Revenue Customs Service, in collaboration with our partners, most notably on Garda Síochána, have seized over 100 tonnes of drugs at the point of entry into the country, some 350 million worth of drugs. So the reason we're here today is to look and seek the help of coastal communities, maritime communities. They're the eyes and ears on the ground. They're the people we need. We can't do the job without them.
The Coastal Watch initiative, which was launched this week, aims to help seaside communities spot and inform authorities of any suspicious activity related to different ways criminals may transport drugs into the Republic of Ireland via the Atlantic Ocean and then on to Northern Ireland. One such way is via sea drop-offs. They involve larger ships which are travelling from South America, dropping smaller packages into the waters off Ireland's coast, which are then picked up by smaller vessels. The MV Matthew was one such ship. Intercepted by the Irish Navy in 2023, it was found to have tons of cocaine, worth a record €157 million on board. Many of the routes used in this method involve ships travelling to Northern Ireland.
We are aware that there are certain legitimate routes of merchant vessels conveying bulk cargo such as coal from Barraquilla in Colombia directly to Belfast and Derry.
Although the aim is to stop drug trafficking at sea, many shipments do still make it past Ireland's rugged coast, potentially giving way to a smooth path towards Northern Ireland. Preventing this requires cross-border support from both police forces.
We're a European frontier at this stage. Where there's a will, there's a way, and if the criminals see Donegal as a viable option for bringing drugs into Northern Ireland, they will.
Both our local Gardaí and also our national units work very closely with the PSNI in, again, having a joint approach to tackling the importation and the distribution of drug and the activities of organised crime groups.
Ireland's west coast is thousands of miles long, and that makes it difficult to detect drug smuggling. But it's only 40 or so miles from here to the Fermanagh border, and it's hoped this new initiative will not only help prevent drugs coming into the Republic of Ireland, but also Northern Ireland. Jordan Moore, UTV Live, Killybegs.
Some news just in, and the Independent Commission for the Location of Victims' Remains says it is to search a new area of Bragan Bog in County Monaghan for the remains of Colm McVey. Eamon Henry, the lead investigator, says the search, which has been ongoing since August, will now take in 8 acres of bogland. Mr McVey was abducted, murdered and secretly buried by the IRA 50 years ago in October 1975.
Time now on the programme to look at the headlines making tonight's ITV news at 6:30.
And here's Mary Nightingale. And so to sport.
Here's Will.
The game is heating up. John Mulholland Motors, sponsors of UTV Sport.
Good evening. Well, in the last couple of hours, Rangers have appointed Danny Rowell as their new head coach. The former Sheffield Wednesday boss replaces Russell Martin, who was sacked after just 17 games in charge. The German has signed a 2.5-year deal. Now, the curtain came down on the career of one of Northern Ireland's greatest ever sports stars at the weekend. A 6-time World Superbike champion, Jonathan Rea, retired from the sport. But unfortunately, it wasn't a weekend for him to remember. Our sports correspondent Ruth Gorman reports from Jerez.
17 years after making his World Superbike debut and 10 years after winning the first of his 6 world titles right here in Jerez, Jonathan Rea returned to Spain for one final time to bring the curtain down on what has been an illustrious career. But in a cruel twist, he didn't get the ending he'd hoped for. 2 crashes in 2 days, and he was forced to miss the final race of the season. When Jonathan Rea announced his retirement from full-time racing in August, the plan was to go out as strongly as possible. Feeling a better connection with his Yamaha bike in recent weeks, he was excited about his final weekend. But those emotions quickly changed when firstly he crashed out of race 1 on Saturday
Jonathan Rea, he was so fortunate,
and then was stretchered off after a collision during lap 1 of the Superpole race on Sunday.
Being recovered, there's no red flag at the moment.
Rea was deemed unfit to take part in race 2, the final World Superbike event of the season, a decision he found extremely tough to take when told by the medical team.
I got upset just earlier when I was declared unfit because it's not the way I wanted to finish, but it's relief is the biggest. Like I say, the sports took away so much from me, but the offsets was better than the hardships I've gone through, for sure. So just incredibly grateful to all my family, all the teams I've ridden for over the past year, and even it's been tough here at Yamaha. I want to thank them massively because they never gave up right to the very last race, and all the support I've had, all the fans. I also feel like I took a little bit away from them this weekend. They didn't get the fairy tale that we all dreamed of, but I think my fairy tale's been, we had an incredible run, so I think after the dust settles, that'll be what I'll be remembered for.
Despite the disappointment, there were still plenty of celebrations for the 6-time world champion.
It doesn't come down to one day, it is a lifespan of achievements instead of just one moment.
Thank you so much for what you've done from a wee small part of the world. What more can we say?
I'm so glad to see him finished in one piece. Got it. I didn't get the chance to go out the way I wanted to, but what he's achieved in his career is beyond our wildest dreams, and I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful to have him in one piece.
We can't really forget the reason why we came here. It wasn't the same sort of finish at a race, it was the same finish his career, and it's been exceptional. Just unfortunate the way it's went today, but we have to take, he's leaving here sore but healthy.
The most important thing is he's okay. He's physically beat up, but nothing can ever take away what he's achieved and the human person he is. We're all incredibly proud of him. Yeah, we'll move forward and get home. I'm always joking that I'm like, he still doesn't know what bin day is because he's never really been home for bin day. So I'm like, you're going to do bin day from now on, but with a hobbly leg, maybe I'll have to do the bins a bit longer.
So while there's physical and emotional pain from his final weekend in Jerez, Jonathan Rea can leave Spain with his head held high and when the dust settles reflect on a career unrivalled. and one we may never see the likes of again. Ruth Gorman, UTV Live, Jerez.
In Gaelic games, St John's picked up the Antrim Hurling Championship for the first time since 1973 as they defeated Lochgill yesterday. Meanwhile, Newbridge secured the Derry Football Championship for a second year in a row. The Fermanagh final will be replayed after it ended in a draw. Kilcoo defeated Carryduff in the County Down showpiece to win the Frank O'Hare Cup for the 7th year in a row. Daniel Duffy rounds up the action.
It had been 52 years since St John's lifted the Volunteer Cup. That long wait is finally over. Donald Carson showed skill, pace and trickery to find the back of the net and help secure a famous 2-point win.
He missed the point earlier on.
It's taken us a while to get back here between 94, the last time we won in 73. There have been so many finals in between, and I'm looking up here and see a suit blue and white. Honestly, I'm so emotional for this club. Big Ears is coming back to the way.
Meanwhile in Down, the weather forced a 90-minute delay to throw in. That didn't hamper Kilcoo, who were chasing a 7th Down championship in a row. Paul Devlin's first half penalty, a big moment. The Magpies found themselves 10 points ahead in the second half. Carryduff rallied, but couldn't get within touching distance. An all too familiar sight at full time, the Kilcoo juggernaut keeps on winning.
There was a lot of things been said about Kilcoo over the last few weeks and maybe 2 months, and we were just letting that build up. We knew the external noise, we didn't want it to affect us. We knew where we wanted to get to. We wanted to get to a championship final, and we wanted to put in our best performance that we do. Listen, we were able to see the game out.
It'd be sweet at the final whistle and every year with the boys you grew up with, you went to school with and you hung about with, and all you do is play football and talk about football. The more I get older and the more experienced, and the more special it is to me, because I'm coming to the latter end of my career, and you can't take these things for granted, we're going in these games thinking maybe this could be our last down final, and you just don't know, and you want to make sure you're showing Kilcoo off the identity as best as possible, what kind of footballers we have in our club,
Well, it was a day for the Ducks, but it was a day for the Magpies of Kilcoo as they secured a magnificent 7 county titles in a row. They will face the champions of Tyrone in the Ulster Club Championship next month. Daniel Duffy, UTV Live, at Park Esler in Uri.
Well, football next, and Coleraine remain top of the Irish Premiership after a 4-0 win at home to Dungannon Swifts on Saturday. Glentoran are 2 points behind, but with the game in hand after their win against Ballymena, while champions Linfield are down in 6th after a 2-0 defeat at Portadown on Friday night. Cliftonville retained the Women's Irish Cup on Saturday with a 2-0 win over Linfield at Windsor Park. Caitlin McGuinness and Fee Morgan got the goals for the Reds, who completed a cup double after winning the League Cup in June. Now, Ulster maintained their perfect start to the United Rugby Championship campaign with a bonus point win over the Sharks in Durban. Mike Laurie, Werner Koch, Tom Stewart and Callum Reid all scored tries in the 34 points to 26 victory, while man of the match Nathan Doak added 14 points with the boot. Ulster will remain in South Africa to face the Lions in Johannesburg on Saturday. Well, sticking with rugby, in Ireland will be without winger Mac Hansen for their autumn internationals after he was forced off in Connacht's defeat to the Bulls on Friday. Bundyaki and Robbie Henshaw are also injured out, but will travel with the squad to Chicago tomorrow ahead of facing New Zealand on November the 1st. Well, switching to the NFL, and Swatress Jude McAtamney has taken responsibility for the New York Giants' defeat to the Denver Broncos last night. The former Derry GAA player missed 2 extra points at Mile High Stadium, which proved costly as the Giants lost by a single point, 33 points to 32.
Got to make the kicks. I'm not going to shy away from that. Look, I'll take full responsibility. Then everybody in children down. Got to make the kicks once it comes up. It's as simple as that. Like, if the snap's not perfect, the hole's not perfect, like, I'm a professional kicker. I've got to be able to make those, pull those guys out of the hole when I need to.
Finally, in ice hockey, the Belfast Giants made it a perfect start to the defence of their Elite League title after a double over the Flyers home and away at the weekend. Last night they won 5-2 at the Fife Ice Arena after a 3-1 victory at the SSC Arena on Saturday night. That's all your sport this evening. Bye for now.
The game is heating up. John Mulholland Motors, sponsors of UTV Sport.
It was a lovely day in some places today, especially when you compare it to yesterday.
Well, Louise is with us. There was indeed a lot of rain yesterday. Is that normal for mid-October?
During autumn, we have wet and windy conditions at all times. Yesterday, though, we had a deluge of rainfall across County Down. 59.2 millimetres of rain recorded at Killowen. In a 36-hour period, though, across County Down, there was more than half a month's rainfall, and that led to that flooding in Newcastle and all those difficulties for residents living in the town. Over the next couple of days, we will continue to see scattered showers at times. It is going to potentially turn wet and windy through Thursday, something to keep an eye on over the next couple of days. Following behind that, then we have cooler air coming our way, which could see a few wintry showers over the tops of the hills and the return of overnight frost by the time we get to the weekend. So we have a real change on the way this week in comparison to the gloomy conditions that we had last week as low pressure is dominating our weather. Here's the forecast.
It's time to take a rain check. There's no place like home. UTV weather. Sponsored by the Grande Rona R290 heat pump.
So we have some rather changeable conditions to come this week. Plenty of rain in the forecast, some bright and sunny spells at times, and it will feel noticeably cooler by the time we get to the end of the week and into the weekend. We could see a wintry shower or two over the tops of the hills. Low pressure is dominating our weather this week. We've said goodbye to high pressure. Low pressure will bring further outbreaks of rain at times. Some blustery winds through Thursday and feeling noticeably cooler as we head towards Friday and into the weekend. Tonight, one or two dry spells for a time. Thicker cloud will start to push in, some rain pushing in from the west, one or two heavy bursts there. The breeze will start to pick up during the early hours as well. Quite a lot of hill fog over the tops of the mountains, quite murky, temperatures dipping to lows of around 8 degrees Celsius. So a breezy, cloudy, murky start tomorrow, any hill fog lifting to low cloud. Quite a lot of rain pushing through there during the first part of the day. Scattered showers following behind, some brighter breaks at times. Winds gusting at 30 miles per hour and temperatures holding up around 13 or 14 degrees Celsius. Across the rest of Ireland, it's a very similar story. Largely dry, a number of scattered showers, some bright and sunny spells, patchy cloud bubbling up with a freshening breeze and a top temperature of 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So over the next couple of days, temperatures will fall away tomorrow night into Wednesday. So it's a cool and chilly start on Wednesday. A drier day, one or two showers possible. Then we have some wet and potentially windy weather through Thursday. Temperatures will slowly start to trend down through Friday and into Saturday. We could see one or two wintry showers over the tops of the hills. Temperatures at night feeling quite cool and chilly. Bye-bye.
UTV weather. Sponsored by the Grande Rona R290 heat pump.
Just before we go tonight, a reminder, it's the annual Pride of Britain Awards this evening at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. The best of luck to this year's regional fundraiser, Joanne Harris, the founder of Knitted Knockers, a charity helping those with breast cancer. And you can see the award ceremony on Thursday night here on UTV and on ITVX at 8 o'clock.
Well, that's the latest news, sport and weather this Monday, the 20th of October. Paul will be back with our late news bulletin at around 10:30.
The ITV News continues now with Mary Nightingale. From Rose, from me and the rest of the news team, good evening.